going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. We're catching up on some of the big stories from the big wrestling companies and the big wrestling promotions over the last week or so. Before we get into that, though, I want to remind you guys that I always got a lot of free goodies down for you in the description box below. You can get a bunch of free stocks right now. I think it's up to 6 to 8 free stocks from Webull by just signing up and joining up with Webull, and you could get stocks anywhere from $3 on up. Might as well just take it and get the free money and cash them out if you want, or keep the stocks if you want to. It's an interesting time in the market, so if you want to get involved with it, you've been thinking about it, now's a good opportunity to do so. First thing I want to talk about is this giant press conference that WWE had the other day with Logan Paul and Roman Reigns, which this kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people, but it started on it started on Impaulsive, when Jake Paul had Roman Reigns on there for a real interview on his podcast, and then after Roman left, Jake started going into work, putting the asses in the seats and telling his audience, you know, I think I could take him, and they were comparing it to how he went up against Floyd Mayweather a couple years ago in that big fight that everybody talked about. This carried over Friday night onto SmackDown. Heyman couldn't get across to him, so Sami Zayn said, let me try, and Sami Zayn gets in there, Heyman throws the microphone, he's like, fine, go ahead, you handle him. And Sami Zayn gets knocked out for his trouble. This then leads into the YouTube press conference. This all happened over the course of a couple of days, and I actually was able to watch most of it. Logan Paul comes out with this press conference by himself. Roman's got the entire bloodline with him. Paul Heyman, the Usos, everybody's out there with Roman, and it dawned on me when I watched this and I saw Triple H coming up there doing his best Dana White impression that in this instance, WWE has done something that AEW hasn't really quite fulfilled in what their promotion has been. And that's that AEW is always, you know, at the beginning, we should say, not so much anymore, but at the beginning, they were supposed to have a more sports-oriented feel, and they did have a real sports-oriented feel with the kind of ways they did their video packages and stuff. But that has kind of fallen by the wayside in AEW. But this here, even from the graphics they used, it looked like something that was like a boxing fight or an MMA fight, a big-time pay-per-view fight, which is, you can kind of see Triple H kind of steering WWE more in that direction. And I think that's a good thing, because it feels like this match is now more important because you give that little bit of ambiance to it. It's not the usual WWE stuff we've seen in the past. In fact, it's kind of old school in a lot of ways, because old WWF would have these from, you know, very rarely though. But this was good. There was no big, you know, spot or angle or altercation. There were a lot of fans yelling out obscenities that they had to bleep out. This is not an AEW press conference, so we don't keep the obscenities in it. You know, even though it's not even coming from the wrestlers, it's coming from the crowd. But it was an interesting standoff. They made some fun points. Logan Paul stole his promos. He needs a little work on them. I think he's trying to ad-lib, and he kind of said stuff that didn't really make any sense as a diss. But at the end of the day, it did come off as if though this was a big deal fight. And unfortunately for me, it's going to be at Crown Jewel. And those of you who follow my channel for a while know that I don't watch the Saudi shows. So not a big deal for me. Again, there's other things to do in wrestling. If I missed a match, it's not the end of the world. But I think the most important thing for me is that this is a different setup. WWE, again, doing something fresh and new, which again is what's giving them the momentum right now in North American wrestling over their rivals. I'm going to switch over to the East now, and at TakaTaichiDespiMania, and you all know, if you know where I'm going with this. My God, Jun Kasai had a match with El Desperado in the main event, a death match. And it has been a long time since I've seen a Japanese death match. This thing is probably one of the most, this is not for the faint-hearted. And I'm going to tell you why. And if you haven't seen it, you don't know anything about Jun Kasai or some of these matches, we'll get into it. But the history of this is it goes back to, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, when El Desperado was out of action for a while, missed a couple of tournaments and a couple of tours because he had a match against Jun Kasai and legitimately got his jaw broken. So this is the big rematch, and these guys are coming out there. The crowd is cheering them on. They had the nerve, both of them, to dress all in white. It's like, oh boy, we just want the best visual for all the blood that we're about to see in this thing. And it is carnage, and some of this stuff I have not seen before. Like literally, they had blades like this, like put into like a little piece of plywood sticking up. Now they had like cardboard on it to kind of soften the blow, so like just the edge of the blade was on there, so if you fell on it, it wouldn't go all the way in and cut an artery, but it was enough to slice you open. And there were straight razors and razor blades on boards, and I think it was a bed of forks and scissors and all, cut up beer cans with the jagged edges hanging out of them, and every single one of those gimmicks these guys fell on. And not just fell on kinda, fell on hard, on their backs, on their heads. At one point, Desperado is banging Kasai's head into the board of straight razor blades, and he is just bleeding all over the place. Then, if that's not enough, this crazy son of a bitch actually takes a fork and sticks it in his own forehead, channeling Abdul Butcher here a little bit, and the thing is just stuck there, and I'm just watching. It's like, it is one of the most insane things you will see this year. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, and because this match is getting a lot of play online. It's Joe Moxley's looking at this match and going, so hopefully not this week for the Arthur Ashe show. I don't think Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson will go for that, but Moxley's thinking of some of these spots and trying to. He wants to do some of this shit on AEW, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see Jun Kasai on AEW pretty soon. Desperado is kicking out of like everything, like stuff that he should like legitimately not be kicking out of, like. And some people can say that's excessive, but there's a certain level that you feel that, and then they kind of push past that level to it's like, no, this is just a battle between two warriors who are going to go to the ultimate before either one of them is going to lie down, especially Desperado, whose selling is amazing in this. Despi does finally get the win to win the main event match, and then if that wasn't enough, just the match itself was it's a spectacle again, not for the faint of heart. I'm not saying that for effect. It really is not for the faint of heart. There, like I said, there's a lot of bumps that are if you're squeamish, you're in the blood, you're not going to like it. So I'm warning you right now, but if you can handle that kind of stuff, and if you're a deathmatch fan, this is just a crazy match. It is a match of the year contender in my book. It's going to be high up on the top of my list at the end of the year for match of the year. If the match being great wasn't enough, it's what the post match was that made it even epic now. And this match is going to have legendary status because at the end of the match, Kasai is bowed to by El Desperado, but then Kasai gets on the microphone and he's telling El Desperado, who made a promo before the match, saying he didn't care if he lived or died in the match. And Kasai took exception to this after the match, and this all comes from really that recently in the past, I believe it was last week in Japan, there was this tragic story about a 3-year-old who was left on the bus for hours and died of heat exposure and exhaustion. And it was a story that really, I mean, that's a terrible story, and that is what drove Kasai to say, hey, there are some people in this world that don't get to live to when they're supposed to live to, and you don't need to say that. You're in New Japan, you're one of the best in the world, you're the best of the Super Juniors, all this stuff. You shouldn't be thinking about dying in the ring. You should be trying to honor the ring. It honors you by living through a death match, not dying in a death match. There's no honor in that. The honor is in living and surviving the death match. That's what you want. That's what you want to desire. And that kind of hit Desperado, and you can see it in his face. By the way, Desperado's mask was completely ripped off about 5 minutes into his match. And he's just like, yeah, you're right, And that is, you can watch it, even though it's in Japanese. There are subtitles online. The subtitles, even with that, I know a lot of people say they can't get into New Japan because it's in Japanese, and a lot of promos in Japanese because it's Japanese people. But with the subtitles, you just reading it in their body language, I'm telling you, it's some moving stuff. What happens in this post match that elevates the match now to another level, that it not only was a great crazy wrestling match with a lot of heart and a lot of hardcore stuff in it, but also taking some sad reality and kind of merging the athleticism with the art and the reality of the real world, and this interesting like pocket of reality where this promo works. It's a very unique thing that you don't see a lot in wrestling on a genuine level like this. So I definitely would suggest watching it. It is what everybody says it is. Last little note here, yes, back in AEW, we're picking up with the all the issues. I still see people think this thing is a work, and you know, it is what it is. We'll see if the lawsuits come out. If there are actual lawsuits filed, then I think that's your official notification that it's not a work. But pretty much everybody who was not supposedly directly involved in the fight and who were just involved in the pull apart have now been, their suspensions has been lifted. So that's Brandon Cutler, Michael Nakazawa, Pat Buck, a couple other people. So they're now officially back, allowed to go back and work on the road with AEW, especially coming up with this week with the Arthur Ashe show. Still the Bucks, Omega, and CM Punk, and of course, Mr. Chomp Down, Pac-Man himself, Ace Steel. They are still suspended, apparently, from the company. No word as to yet. And I think it feels like we're going to get word pretty soon on this. If we don't, it's probably something that's going to kind of fade, and they're going to hope that it fades. But eventually, they're going to have to address what is the status of CM Punk in AEW, what is the status of the Young Bucks in AEW, and what is the status of Kenny Omega, who is, by the way, living his best life of Kota Ibushi over in Japan this week for the Tokyo Video Game Convention, debuting the AEW Fight Forever game over there. But, you know, what happens with him? Kenny's taking it easy and still working for the company, apparently. So, in a different capacity, just not as an active wrestler. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Hopefully we'll get answers to all of this, but I want to know what you guys think about these stories. What do you think about Logan Paul against Roman Reigns in the main event of Crown Jewel in WWE and how they got there? What do you think about this now, which is going to be a legendary match between El Desperado and Kasai this past week at TakaTaichiDespiMania? Make sure I say that right for Taka. He'll get mad at me. What do you think about the suspensions and what the status is, and when we're going to find out what's really going on after all the craziness the other week and AEW with all of the suspensions from the fight after All Out? Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here for more news, rumors, and commentary on the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.